You're at this big indaba. Whenever they use the word indaba in relation to a sector, it sounds like a big event. Why is this particular one so important?
Well, I think if you look at the industry, particularly in your ICT environment, and you're talking about improving the knowledge base of our society, it is quite key that we do have a union of this format, particularly on the continent, because yes, whilst we might have done great strides in delivering voice and type services to our customers, the key thing is for Africa to really leapfrog the digital divide. We have to go into broadband, and the key thing here is all the key players who are involved in really changing the face of Africa in the future in one roof. It's quite important for the session to happen.
When you say all the key players are there, what is the format here, and what are they hoping to get out of this? Are agreements going to be made, or things going to be signed that will change the way things are done?
Well, I think at this point in time, there will not be certainly any agreements as such, but I think the fact that it's a clear partnership between government and private enterprises to see that we do have a common framework. And I think for us as players to engage with government in various regulatory environments to say, this is how Africa needs to move quite quickly, particularly because the rest of the world is not going to wait for Africa. And I think we need to make sure that whatever stumbling blocks are in the way are removed, and that there's common alignment between all parties to ensure that the greater goal of really improving Africa's access to broadband is rapidly achieved. Looking at
achieving the rapid change, there must be obstacles, there are problems. What are the big problems that have been identified that have to be overcome to make things happen?
I think the key challenge here still remains the issues of infrastructure within the continent. So yes, we've done rapid growth in terms of all the undersea cables now landing to the continent. The key issue is how do you get all that capacity right down to the household? How do we ensure that it's not just people in urban environments, but right in deep rural, that they also have access to this infrastructure? And the key thing here is it does involve a lot of investment. And what's important here is for governments, particularly in the continent, to create an investor-friendly environment where people can come and invest, and also to identify the partners like, for instance, MTN, who have a more longer-term ambition and plan of being in a continent as opposed to just a short-term run.
Obviously, big players like MTN are going to be players on the continent. What is the expectation on you? Because governments have limited resources. MTN is a big company, and companies like it, they have a large reach and lots of capital, but on the other hand, they've got to answer to shareholders and deliver returns. How does that balance play out?
I think the key thing there is about the fact that we are taking a long-term investment. And yes, whilst sometimes there is an intent to open up the markets and allow other players in, it has to be taken, it has to take cognizant of the fact that the existing players have the greater intent or ability to reach out to more outlying areas. And even though the markets are opened up, it must also have the same obligation as the incumbents have had.
What's the view on fixed line and mobile? Because if you look at a company like Telkom in South Africa, it fell behind when it came to the mobile. It sold off its interest in Vodacom, your opposition, and lost that access to the mobile market, and has been catching up ever since. And there are still strategic calls to be made. I mean, there are a lot of people in South Africa who will never have a fixed line telephone. They've simply bypassed it and gone straight to mobile.
Well, I think if you are talking particularly in the area of broadband and access to broadband, mobile is clearly going to deliver that quite significantly. That being said, your fixed line incumbents, particularly like a Telkom, still play a huge role in the infrastructure required for us to actually expand, particularly into the outlying areas. So the two parties have to actually work hand in glove, but critically that in most of the continent, it is going to be driven by mobile broadband.
The regulatory environment, it must differ from country to country. Some countries haven't thought of some of the things that are going on in the IT space because it happens so quickly. Have you got to overcome a lot of variations in regulatory environment from country to country?
I think that's definitely the challenge, and I think the point of indabas such as these is that if we're working towards a common agenda where there is alignment, and most importantly that we can get learnings from operations who've experienced this element, particularly in younger operations, that we can move faster. Obviously, MTN does touch 16 countries on the continent, and it would be much more seamless if a more aligned regulatory framework was taken so that we can apply these intents and strategies and actually make them come to reality much sooner.
Has the Indaba talked money? How much money is required to get the continent to the level it should be?
I think the Indaba has identified the size of the investment required here. And I think that goes to your earlier question that it does require a very good partnership between public enterprise and private enterprise for this to be done. And I think if you're looking for your investor community, they will only do so and they will only come with that capital if they find the environment is suitable enough and attractive enough for them to invest.
Are you expecting, as a major player in this, is this a talk shop with lots of problems aired but no progress, or are you expecting some concrete progress at the end of this?
I think, I must say, from a ministerial perspective, the seriousness of which is being taken, certain concrete steps will be taken, and I think this is no longer a talk shop, it's about now doing.